Welcome to Work From Your Happy Place, the podcast that equips you with the knowledge and inspiration to live your dreams and find your own happy place. You will be encouraged by and learn from entrepreneurs and artists who are already working from their happy place, all while pursuing their passion with a purpose. Be sure to sign up for our free weekly newsletter for a recap of the week's guests and a preview of what's in store. We also have 2 special gifts for you: a video, the 5 core principles to living a happier life, and a printable download titled Top 10 Sales Strategies. Go to workfromyourhappyplace.com/free and fill out the attached form to receive your gifts and be added to our newsletter. And now, here's your host, Belinda Ellsworth.
Hi, it's Belinda here. And before we get started with today's show, I'd like to tell you about some exciting things coming soon that I think you're going to love. After over 500 episodes, we've discovered so many tips, tools, and bits of knowledge that we want to share it all with you. So this spring, we are launching a brand new online community and quarterly subscription box. Here's how it works. Each quarter, you'll receive an amazing box full of items to bring you happiness in both work and in life. Each box includes items designed by entrepreneurs just like yourself for your home, office, personal care, and so much more. It will also contain a business book and our Acts of Kindness shareables so you can show appreciation to your customers and anyone who needs to be lifted up. In the months between box deliveries, you'll learn from an amazing community of business owners, including guided trainings on business skills and personal development, a book club that features Q&A time directly with that month's author, and a monthly featured guest from whom you'll learn strategies to grow your own business. You'll learn from one another through our private group, as well as our live monthly Q&A session where you can get all of your questions answered. Sound exciting? How would you like a free 6-month subscription? To enter, get on our VIP list by going to workfromyourhappyplace.com/VIP. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy today's show. Hello, everyone. It's Belinda, and I'm here today with Richard Newman. And Richard is an award-winning expert in communication, storytelling, and influence. At 18, he lived in the foothills of the Himalayas, teaching English to Tibetan monks. Richard went on to work as an actor, keynote speaker, coach, and speechwriter, winning the coveted Cicero Grand Prize for Speechwriter of the Year. He created one of the largest studios on nonverbal communication and influence ever made, published in the peer-reviewed journal Psychology. He is the CEO and founder of UK Body Talk, a global leader in the training on the science of communication. It is my pleasure to welcome Richard to our show today.
Great. Thanks so much, Belinda. Thanks for having me. Yeah, I'm really good. Thank you.
Oh, good. So you're in England right now. Is that correct or no?
Yeah, that's right. So I'm just west of London, sort of north of where Windsor Castle is.
Oh, okay. Perfect. So why don't we start, we've got some details of your bio, but why don't you fill in the gaps for us and let us get to know you a little bit better and tell us a little bit about your journey and really what led you to doing the work you're doing today.
Sure. Well, the journey for me in teaching people communication started all the way back when I was about 4 years old. So when I was 4, coming up to my 5th birthday, my parents moved house and I went to a new school. And I have this vivid memory of that first day at school, which I'm sure many people can relate to if you had to change school at any point. And I went in and was hoping to make some new friends. And I have this memory about partway through the day where I was trying to speak to the people around me and they were giggling, turning away, not wanting to engage with me. And the more that I tried, the less that other people seemed to respond. And I had this overwhelming feeling of being completely alone. But more than that, being with this sensation of being trapped in a glass bubble, unable to connect with other people, and burst into tears as a 4 going on 5-year-old might do. And it was this situation that continued all the way through my school years, a sensation of being just slightly on the outside as a communicator. And it'd be many, many years later when I realized that, I was shy as a child. I'm also highly introvert, but it was only very recently that I was diagnosed as being autistic. And what that means to me is that I am sort of looking at neurotypical communication as an outsider. To me, it seems somewhat strange, and I have to figure out what it is and how it's working in order for me to connect and communicate with most people. So hence my fascination with communication that started off with me reading my first book on communication around about the age of 16, where I read the book Body Language by Alan Pease, one of the classic works. And I then continued to read about 200 books in the area of communication, all around sort of body language, also words, storytelling, voice, presence, gravitas, anything that I could find. And meanwhile, as you mentioned there in the introduction, I decided that I wanted to go off and do something good for the world and help other people find their voice. And so I found myself in this Tibetan monastery where I was teaching English to these monks who didn't speak any English when I arrived. So if you can imagine this, I was there as an 18-year-old living for 6 months with a group of people where we had no common language. And so we had to use body language and tone of voice to find a way to connect and to understand each other. And by the end of the 6 months, they could all then have a decent conversation in English with me. And I actually learned how to speak Nepali, which was the main language of the little area that we were living in. And I came back profoundly moved by the possibilities of nonverbal communication. I then studied acting for 3 years at a brilliant London acting school, learning more about stage presence, storytelling, connecting with an audience. And all of this led to me being an entrepreneur by accident. So what happened was I was in my at my local hairdressers, and the hairstylist, he said to me, "So what do you do? What are you interested in?" And I said, "Well, I was teaching overseas. I've been studying acting. I read books on things like body language." And he said, "I'm going to give you a free haircut if you come back and teach some of my hairstylists how to communicate with their customers, because they're not very good at making an impact." And I said to him, "Look, I don't know how to do that. I've never done that before." And he said, "You'll work it out. Come back next week and teach them something." And so I found myself teaching 4 streetwise London teenagers how to connect with people, and they loved it. And I had a great time as well. And this then led to going back sort of a few weeks later, where I ended up getting a phone call from someone who said, "Look, I'm the head of an engineering company in the UK, and I just had my hair cut today. My hairstylist said that you're the #1 communication coach in the country, and I want you to come and train 40 engineers who are about to do a big exhibition." And he said, "How much do you charge?" And I said, "I'll have to call you back," because in my head I was thinking, well, I charge a free haircut. That's what I charge. So I called my dad, who is a bit of an entrepreneur himself, and he said, "We'll charge as much as you can think of." And so I charged them. I remember it was something like 300 British pounds to do this session. And immediately he said, "Wow, that's fantastic. I would have paid you 10 times that. Come and train my engineers." They loved it. And as things went, I set up a website, word of mouth started to spread. And here I am 23 years later, and we've trained over 120,000 people all over the world. I've got this team of 20 people working with me. And it's really been an accidental sort of growth of a business that I'm now really proud of to help people around the world find their voice.
Wow, that's a lovely story. Thank you so much for sharing that.
You're
So
welcome.
often we do come across what is our greatest skill sets accidentally, right? And
Mm.
we discover something and we're like, I could actually turn this into my profession, which is always fun then to really discover something you enjoy.
Yeah,
So
yeah, I
that's
really, I really agree with that. I mean, this is something where during the pandemic, I noticed the same sort of thing coming up in me, the same sort of passion. There was like an itch that I needed to scratch, and so my wife and I put together a sort of a health and wellness online retreat sort of feel for people, because we thought, what do people need in a pandemic? They can't get out there. They're struggling to look after their health. They're struggling to look after their wellness. Let's inspire people. And truly, I needed the inspiration myself. I wanted to surround myself with positive, vibrant people who could lecture me on great things. And we asked all these brilliant experts, and everyone that we asked said yes. I mean, they were sitting at home not doing a lot, so they said, "Okay, let's do this thing." And then we had 500 people sign up for this summit, which then helped me then learn more things that I could be sharing with our clients. So I always encourage people, if there's something that you're passionate to learn about, then follow that passion and figure it out, and then see if you can pass that on to other people.
So what would you say then, like when you first start working with some individuals to become a better communicator, what do you think the 3 key ingredients are for that?
Yeah, great question. So there's various different areas to work on here. The first piece that I like to work on with people is the story, is the message, because you get a lot of people that I get to work with. They're bright, they're intelligent, they're very experienced. They've got a lot of good things to say, and sometimes what they need to say, they've got complex ideas that might seem quite dry or technical to get across, or they've got this brilliant strategy, but nobody can seem to understand it, or they just don't know how to put things together into a message. So I love teaching people storytelling. And storytelling is not telling people anecdotes about the past or talking about historical events. It's about understanding how the brain processes information. And if you know how everyone's brain processes information based on engaging the survival mind, the emotional mind, and the logical mind, and if you can do that through the power of story, you can get anybody to be engaged in any topic. And so I love sharing with people how to stylize what they have to say through the power of story. And you can do it even with a spreadsheet. If you need to talk to people about the KPIs for last quarter, you can turn that into a story that brings the insight to life. Because truthfully, 17.8% doesn't mean anything to anybody until you know what the story is around it. And so I love showing people how you can do that. And you can use storytelling then for an email, a meeting, a conversation, a presentation. So once they've got that piece, and we know that the content is good. Of course, the next piece to work on is their delivery style. And so this being their body language and tone of voice. And I'm always keen to remind people about the story I shared about living with those monks, that sometimes people think that body language is a bit superficial. Somebody once described it to me as nail varnish. It's not the real thing. It's just something put on top of the thing. And so I say to them, but I was genuinely using body language for months to interact with other people so we could understand each other where we had no words. And, human beings all around the world had to do that. Before we had a common language we could share with each other, we had to communicate non-verbally. And there's a huge amount of depth that goes behind this piece. And so what I love to do for people is to break down communication. And I think this is something that, due to being autistic, is my different lens on communication, is the ability to look at, well, what is it that's working for people and what is not working? And when I see those things happening, I write them down and put them into the research that we create. And so sometimes people come to me saying, look, I've got the story. I now want to have gravitas. I want to have presence. I want to have charisma. And for me, that's just a matter of breaking down, well, what are you doing physically and vocally at the moment? And what do people who have gravitas and charisma do physically and vocally? And let's connect you with those techniques. And so it's really never about making someone be something they're not. It's often connecting them with the brilliant instincts that they would have had when they were younger. So when we're younger, we tend to stand with strong posture. When you see sort of a 1-year-old stand up, they have to stand with good posture, otherwise they fall down. And when you see a 3 or 4-year-old telling a story, they have animated voice and great gestures that they're using with it and bringing the whole thing to life. They can walk into a room of adults and everyone stops breathing and thinking and just looks at the story that they're telling us. And so when you reconnect people with those instincts, they can take a great story and bring it to life in a way that is professional, persuasive, that has gravitas. And then the third point that I work on with people is around their mindset. Because often I find that people know what they're supposed to say and they know how they're supposed to say it. They just can't because the mindset is getting in the way. And so then I love working with people on the power of mindset to make sure that no matter what's going on around them, and I've been in every sort of situation over the last 23 years, I've been in situations where a projector exploded because the room was too hot. There was like steam coming out of it, and then my slides.
Oh my goodness.
I've been in situations where I had to run off stage because I needed the bathroom so badly. I mean, I've been in every situation. And so I love to be able to give people that sense of no matter what's happening, you're going to have an extraordinary mindset so that you can thrive and get the results that you really deserve. And when you put the storytelling and the delivery style and the mindset all together, then suddenly people can be really powerful, persuasive, and get the kind of results they want in day-to-day work.
Wow, those are 3 great tips for sure. So mindset it's kind of that thing that everybody pushes to the side, and yet it's so incredibly important. It's important I teach a lot with setting goals and creating systems, and I have found that I can teach the same exact systems and even word choices and everything to the same two individuals, and one will run with it and the other one doesn't. And it's like, why? And it comes down to mindset, how much that they truly either believe in themselves or the confidence level that they have. So what are some things that people can do to work on getting that healthier mindset?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I've seen this time and time again. I've had that great opportunity of running some of the workshops I deliver thousands of times for thousands of different types of audience. And I can go from one day to the next. And one day people go, this is amazing, and run with it. And the next day, the people will get the same information and they're in the same industry. And yet they'd be struggling to even, get started. So I had this fascination of, well, what is the difference there that's really making all the difference? And so as I started to build out the mindset methodology that I teach, I realized that there was a huge piece around that motivation and commitment to follow through on something, which is about identity. And so I'll give you a great example of this. A very good friend of mine called Kaiser, a few years ago, he roped me into doing a triathlon with him. Now, I don't remember ever agreeing to do this triathlon, but he came to my wife's birthday party. I'd had a couple of cocktails, and the next day he rang my wife and he said, "Did you know that your husband's agreed to do a triathlon with me?" I have no recollection that I did, but we did it together. And he had decided that he wanted to become an athlete. That was his decision. He'd had a situation where in his family, a couple of people have had health challenges. He was feeling out of shape, and he thought, I want to shift my identity such that I now become a triathlete. And so what he started to do is that he would go onto Facebook every day and write down a post which was just about what did he eat in that day and how much exercise had he done. And it got to the point where, friends and family were saying, this is just getting annoying. Could you post, a picture of your kids or something instead of all these posts about this? And I realized after a while what he was doing was changing his identity. Suddenly people would see him as the guy who does lots of exercise, and he would take pictures of himself doing the triathlons that he did. And he went on to do a half Ironman as well at one stage. We both ran the London Marathon, but he sort of took me from that place where I'd never run 5K to the point where I ended up running the London Marathon a couple of times. But it was an identity shift that happened. So identity shift is really important on mindset, because otherwise people can say, look, this will genuinely get you from where you are right now to where you want to be. And people will say, I don't know if I'm the kind of person who can really make that happen. So there's an aspect of identity. The other aspect that goes behind that so that you can get that identity shift to work is values. And so there's a fun part around this, which I love trying with audiences when I'm in person with them. I was doing this at an exhibition I spoke at last week. I said to everyone, okay, on the count of 3, I want you to point north. Wherever you think north is, 1, 2, 3, go. And people pointed in 100 different directions. Nobody knew where it was. But this is actually true of our own lives, where if you say to people, what is your true north? What really is true north for you, where you get to a place where you think, if I'm pointing in this direction, I know that every day is meaningful, and I know that I'm heading towards something that will fulfill me, whether I attain my goal or not. This will be a journey that I want to take. There is value in the journey itself as well as the destination. And the way that you find out what your true north really is through your values. Now, values are talked about a lot, and unfortunately in companies, they're often chipped into the marble in the reception area, and it's like dedication and teamwork and so on, and nobody really pays much attention to it. But we all have our own internal values, by which I mean there are principles that we live our life by. And for any given person, we might have sort of 20 to 30 of these principles that sort of guide us towards behavior that we feel proud of. And so it's often quick for people to figure out what those are, where if I said to you, okay, you can have £1 million or you can have $1 million by this time tomorrow, would you like it? And people say, sure. I say, okay, in order to get that $1 million, a member of your family would end up going to prison. Would you do it? Well, no, of course I wouldn't do it. Why? Because it trips up one of my values. And so you can very quickly think, well, what am I willing to do? What am I not willing to do in order to get in the pursuit of wealth in that example? And so what I ask people to do is, rather than think about 20 or 30, come down to 3 core values that you know are part of how you want to live your life. And they could be things like honesty, work-life balance, a sense of freedom, a sense of being a great parent, whatever they are for you. And you get to that point where you think, these are three values that I truly believe in, that if I live my life based on these, I will always be proud of myself no matter what happens. And what that gives you in your mindset is a sense of no matter what's going on around you, if there's things that are frustrating you in politics, or there's another lockdown that happens, or there's inflation going on in the economy, you can get away from all those distractions and just think, did I live by these three values today? And then if you look at those three values and you write them down, you can think, well, what is the ultimate fulfillment of these three values? What does that look like? If I was to keep living these values for 20 years, where would that take me? And that's your true north destination. And so you can keep going on that journey and feel fulfilled. And so what I love about that is that then gives people a true sense of my identity, where I want to go, feeling proud of myself, having internal validation. And when you've got those pieces in place, then heading towards doing something, you don't have to like have a motivational speaker say, come on, get out there and you can do this. You have internal motivation because you get up and you think, I'm committed to living by this value. And I had somebody recently whose value was, what would grandma do? Because they loved their grandma. And they thought, well, in this situation, my grandma would get out there and fight for it and fight for every situation and treat people with respect. And so it gave them that motivation to get out of bed and be someone that their grandma would be proud of. And so that can give you motivation towards an identity that you care about and keep you going towards your goals.
Great. Wow. So that being said, this brings us to you, and that is, what are sort of your skill sets or sort of your superpowers that you have found that really helps drive you towards being the success that you are today? What sort of things drive you?
Well, I think that something that's always been at my core is a sense of service. So, I've always realized that I have a very blessed life. I live in a free country. I've got parents that love me. I had a good education. And I think coming from that background, I just had a sense of, I really want to do good in the world. I want to be of service to others. I want the world to be better because I was here. I want to be able to lift the other people around me. And that's what inspired me from a very young age. It was when I was 17 when I started doing teaching. I may have done something before then, but that's the earliest memory I have, is that I decided I would teach our high school basketball team. And the reason being, there was an odd thing that happened in my school where for the very first year of high school, for whatever reason in our school, the basketball team didn't exist and you didn't get any coaching on basketball. It was only in the second year of high school that suddenly there was a basketball team you started to play. And that meant that when I started playing basketball, we got annihilated by everybody because they'd all had a year's practice that we hadn't had. And so, for example, our first ever game we played, we were beaten by 81 points to 18.
Oh, no.
And I remember it because the number is like, the number's reversed, 81 to 18. And so I thought, okay, when I'm old enough and I know more about basketball, I'm going to coach the first year of high school because these guys need to be prepared so they don't get annihilated like we were. And I remember even after our first game, half the team just gave up. They said, there is no point. I'm not getting annihilated again. And so I then started when I was 17 in lunchtime at school. I would then coach the first years. I held tryouts for them. I got some of the guys from the basketball team to help me, and I loved doing it. And then that led me to go and work with the monks and teach them. And there's still various charities that I'll go and do free sessions for. So for me, it's always been about a sense of service. And what I love about that is that it then keeps me eternally motivated to keep going. So there's been times, because I've been running a company now for 23 years. Any entrepreneur listening to this, any business owner, any leader will know that's not easy. Like there's a reason why in politics, like you have to give up being the leader after a certain amount of time because it's extraordinarily challenging to keep going. And I've led a business through the 2008 recession. I led it through the 2020 lockdowns that shut down everything that we did. And so I've always come back though to the sense of no matter what happens, no matter what's happening to my business, around my business, I am always going to be dedicated to serving as many people as I can, and that will keep me going. And to give you like an idea around a speed bump of this is that one of my compelling values is to be a good father. I always wanted to, for whatever reason, I've been driven by this desire to be a good parent. And part of that, I thought I want to have a great home for my family in the countryside with a nice garden and country around us and good schools. That's going to be part of my thing. And I remember distinctly when we first moved into our house where I now live. And for about 2 months afterwards, maybe 6 weeks, maybe 2 months, I found it really hard to motivate myself to go to work. And I thought, why is that? And I thought, oh yeah, for years I've been working towards this. And now I feel like I've achieved the goal of, serving my family in the way I wanted to serve them. I thought, I now need to shift my mindset back to, why was I doing this in the first place? I was always doing this from a sense of service. So there'll never be a point at which I reach a financial number where I go, oh, that's enough. I can just now kick back, because the whole point has always been the journey of service. And I think by doing things from that perspective, it gives you a clear mind about, what are you really doing this for? If you don't hit the numbers you wanted to hit this quarter, were you of service to people? Because that's something that you can have more control over.
Absolutely. So let's talk about what's been something you're super proud of, or something that's a standout in your 23 years of business. Is it a project or something that you've accomplished that stands out in your mind as being special?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things, and thank you for asking that. So firstly, for many years, what we were teaching our clients was based on reading hundreds of books on communication, looking at what worked, training people from all over the world, and based on our practical experience, teaching what we believed would help people. But I always knew that there wasn't scientific evidence to what we were doing was working. And so in 2016, I then put together this research project with Professor Adrian Furnham from the University College of London, who's one of the top psychologists in the world. And we worked for 18 months on this project, and we created one of the largest studies ever done on nonverbal communication and influence. And it was extraordinary what happened in this study. But essentially, we involved thousands of people in this from all over the world to prove some universal principles that people can use in communication. And it was funny when we started the project that the team at UCL, they said, look, just so you know, what happens with most research projects is you find out that what you believe is true actually isn't true, or we end up proving nothing and that we don't get any decent statistics, just so you know. And I said, that's okay. I just want to know one way or the other. And we ended up getting published pretty quickly, but in this peer-reviewed journal. And we got this data that when the guy from UCL, who was the head of statistics there, when he handed me the piece of paper, his hand was shaking. And I said, are you okay? What's happening? And he said, I haven't seen statistics as good as this in 35 years of doing this kind of research. And I just looked at this sheet of numbers and I said, I don't actually know what any of this means. And he said, look, in order for these statistics to be good, for them to be valid, you need a number that's above 1 on this piece of paper. And you've got a 16. Like, this is virtually unheard of in research. And it was thanks, in great part to the brilliant team we had at UCL, helping us refine the study before we launched it to get this. And what essentially ended up proving is that anybody can take a couple of principles and they can say the same words, they can wear the same clothes, and they can slightly change their behavior and increase the number of people who think that they're a good leader by 44%, just by learning a couple of key principles that you can teach people in 30 minutes. And we found that if you apply these principles, you can increase the number of people who vote for you in an election by 58%, just by learning a couple of key things. And it worked no matter what your skin color was, what your gender was, what your age was, or where we tested it in the world. And what I love is being able to then say that to our clients and say, do you want to learn how that works? Give me 30 minutes and we'll just show you how it works. And so I was really proud of that. It was totally unexpected from the study. So that's super proud moment for me. And the next super proud moment for me is the book that I've just created, which I've gone through doing this twice now, 2 books that I'm both proud of. But it's a funny thing around creating a book that I think you forget as an author how hard the process is to create a book. It's not just about sitting down and typing it. Like, there's so much that goes on. And I think technically I finished typing my recent one. I've handed in the first manuscript I was proud of sort of early August last year. And we were still working on it, like recording the audiobook and so on through until about April of this year. And then there's all the stuff around the PR and the promotion and various other things. But the reason I'm so proud of this latest book not only that the publisher pushed me so hard, my editor was amazing. And she would just, every week she'd say, "You can do better, Richard. Rewrite this sentence. It doesn't make sense." And she pushed me to the point where I thought, okay, I'm very proud of this. But what I like about it is that we created a workbook rather than just a reading book, where people take part in the experience of the book, so they can take everything that my team have shared for the last couple of decades and really truly create transformation as they're going through it. So I feel proud that it's now available and people can get it.
And what's the name of that, Richard?
Oh, the name of it is Lift Your Impact.
Oh, perfect. I know our audience is going to be interested in that. Okay, so polar opposite of that, what has been one of the greatest challenges that you've had? And then how did you work through that?
So I think, certainly one of the greatest challenges was going through the lockdown experience. So to give people some context on this, in 2019, my business model was that 70% of our work involved us getting on an airplane and flying around the world to go and train our clients in person. And 100% of our work involved being in person with a large group of people. So all of that was made illegal. And we had tens of thousands of pounds going out the business every week. We were paying for a big, expensive London office that we weren't even allowed to go into. We couldn't go through the front door. We had a long contract that we couldn't get out of. And people were coming to me from my business saying, how long is it before we go bankrupt? Just let us know how soon before, we're not going to be able to feed ourselves. And at the same time, which made it 10 times more challenging, is that there was a small organization that suddenly got set up that was hacking into our company's database to steal our client details
then
approach our clients. And then they were saying that they would replicate our work, but do it at a lower fee and trying to take those clients away. And so I then had to simultaneously aim to figure out, how do I look after my team? How do I look after my family? And how do I go through an intense legal battle to get these people to leave us alone? And it was extraordinarily challenging. And I would say to anybody who goes through anything similar to this, firstly, I would say stand up for yourself and take the fight, because there was a period of time where I just thought, I can't do this. I'm not strong enough for this. I don't know if I can face going through this. But what I did is I got up at 5 a.m., Monday to Friday, 5 a.m., and I would do 90 minutes of meditation. So 45 minutes of sitting, breathing, and doing meditation, another 45 minutes of a moving meditation where I was connecting with my body and getting everything aligned. And then I would start working on the problem. And so I wanted to get ahead of the day and work on this until it got to a point where things were working. And I'm delighted to say that, working on my own mindset, then working on the mindset of my team and that of our clients and so on, meant that we've actually gone up financially every year. So that the economy, and the situation things should have meant that we went down as a business. And I know a lot of people in our industry who went down, but we actually have been going up every single year as a result. And I'm super proud of the culture that we now have in our company, which we didn't have before. So to anybody who's facing similar challenges, I would always say, work on the mindset, get that piece right, look after yourself first, and then take on the challenge.
Wow, that's super advice. I think that was a very difficult time for a lot of people. And I think a lot of people are still struggling through ramifications of the lockdown and businesses that were destroyed and not really. And you know what it is they've struggled. As I'm listening to you and I'm going through just that challenge and then some of the other things that you shared. And I think it's because people lost their identity in that, and they have not been able to carve out that new identity for what does their life look like now in post new business or post COVID and a lot of people are struggling with that. And when you named that as one of the top 3 components, I think that is why people are continuing to struggle. They have not really clearly defined that identity for themselves again.
Yeah, absolutely. I saw this with so many people, people who've come to us for support, where you can see this in all sorts of organizations where up until the lockdown, I think a lot of people were going through the motions without questioning it. They would drive to work. Maybe they'd drive an hour, hour and a half to work. They'd be in this steel and glass building doing tasks that they felt were important for some reason. And then they would drive an hour and a half home, and they'd maybe collapse and go to bed and get up the next day and not really see much of their family. And then we had this opportunity in the lockdown where people were stuck at home. Maybe they were furloughed. They weren't having to go into work. And then a lot of people sat back and thought, why was I doing that? I cannot even understand why for years I was doing this task, working with people who maybe they didn't like, working for a business they didn't really understand, spending so much time away from their family. And then they sort of looked at it and thought, I just don't know if that was really what I want to do with my life. And now I'm not sure what that is. Like, what do I really want the future to be? And so it's critical for people to find a sense of, what is a meaningful life for you? And then start moving in that direction, even if it's challenging to begin with. I can tell you the first 10 years of running my business, I gave you like a brief version of the story, but it was really hard to figure out. I never went to university. I didn't know what running a business looked like. I didn't know how to get clients. I didn't know what a sales pitch was. It was hard, but it was worthwhile because every day I thought, I'm doing something I really believe in. And I could have, in a month, I might train a few people where I thought that person is now lit up because of something I said to them. And that feels really meaningful to me. Even if I am scrabbling to survive, I've done something that I believe in. And so I would really encourage people to find a way to figure out, where are you right now? Get really honest with the challenges you're facing and describe a future that would be meaningful for you, not to your parents, to society, or to expectations placed on all of us, genuinely inside of you. Where do you really want to be? And then think about the journey that you would go on to get there. And this is the key bit, actually, just to mention, the journey is the point. The journey really is the point. And I'd heard loads of people say that, and I only really understood it quite recently. The journey is the whole point. Because when you watch a movie where somebody's having a challenge, they're trying to achieve a goal, what you get is a montage sequence. There's a montage that lasts for one song. So it's like 3 minutes long, where they go from they can't do anything and they're really annoyed to suddenly they are the king of the world. And the montage doesn't take length of a song. It's going to take the length of maybe 5 years for that transformation. So you've got to be patient and believe in the journey and know that the journey of transformation, the journey of growth is the point. So any of these, short-term hacks that people have of, how to do whatever you want to achieve in the next 3 days, it's kind of crazy. Instead of that, the journey is the point. The growth that you get through that is the point. And so to find a journey that it's worthwhile, that you're willing to commit for that period of time is the place to go. Even if it's hard, it's worth the effort.
Wow, that's such great advice. So the signature question of our show, and I kind of already know the answer to this just by listening to you, but what is working from your happy place? What's that mean to you?
Well, I think I've really discovered working from my happy place more so over the last couple of years because, as I mentioned back in 2019, 70% of our work involved getting on an airplane. So in 2019, for me personally on the team, I had, I think, 45 flights, international flights that I took in the space of a year. And it meant that 3 or 4 nights a week I was living out of a suitcase, and I've got young kids. And so when the lockdown came and we managed to get over the challenges we had and get some work coming in, I suddenly realized being able to inspire people and then be able to turn off a webcam and go and hug my kids was a matter of really being able to work from my happy place. But it's what I've got to now is a sense of really nice balance where I do still travel and I'll go off and work all over the place. I'm going to work. Actually, next week I'll be in Lisbon and Lithuania. That's unusual to do 2 countries in a week. And I've got LA coming up in a couple of months. And so I do still do the travel work and get in person with people. But I do also love being able to be here for my kids in the morning and the evening and be here for my clients during the day. So it's that sense of doing something fulfilling and being able to do the other pieces outside of work as well.
Oh, that's fantastic. So you've given us lots of great advice. So in closing, any new and exciting things that you're working on? You got your new book out, which that's exciting, but anything that you would like our listeners to know about, and any last parting words of wisdom for those like wanting to start their own business?
Well, if people want to start their own business, I always say to them, whatever happens, start right now. Do not wait to be ready. And I'll let you know that there's a friend of mine who has been working on launching a business, I think for roughly the last 6 years, I'm going to guess. And I always say to people, don't wait to be ready. Whatever you're doing, even if you're working really hard, take 30 minutes a week to start your business. And just figure out what you want that to be. Start it as a side hustle and then go. I had a guy once who was saying, I want to launch a kennels where I get to have 50 dogs and I'm looking after them all the time, but I can't invest the $3 million that I need to set up the thing. And so when I said, like, how many times has someone paid you to walk their dog? Oh, never. No one's ever paid me that. And I said, just start with that. Get one person to pay you to look after their dog for 1 hour. And that's going to build up to the point where they will pay you to look after that one dog when they're on holiday. And then you can build the 50 dogs from there. Don't try and start with 50 dogs. Start with one dog. And the same can be applied to every single business. So I'd always encourage people, start right now. Do a free session at your local hairdressing salon like I did, or whatever the equivalent is for you. But for me, like, if people want to stay in touch and get motivated and inspired, the book is where I'm focused on getting that message out at the moment. So I have this website, liftyourimpact.com/the book. And if you go onto that website, you can find out more about what the message of this book is. There's videos on there, and there's all the social media connections there where I'm sending out free tips for people all the time. So if people want to get some free resources, and I believe there's a way you can click on there and you get, I think, the first 30 pages of the book for free. So people can just get started working on their values and so on. So that's really the focus for me right now.
Perfect. Well, Richard, this has been delightful. I've loved our conversation so much. Thank you so much for taking the time for our audience and imparting such great wisdom with them. So thank you.
Thanks for having me on the show. Thank you.
And to all of our listeners out there, thank you for spending time with us. We know you have a choice of where to spend your time. It's so valuable, and we're so grateful that you chose to spend it with us today. So remember to follow or subscribe, leave us a great review, and don't forget to grab your free gifts. And we'll see you next time on Work From Your Happy Place.